Sanctuary areas, no take, no exploitation. Even small ones are valuable, and that's the point I'm going to make today. And Sydney, believe it or not, has some of the best research along these lines in the world, and the world is watching. You know, really, Australia is one of the leaders, and so we need to do it for ourselves, but we also need to do it for the world, I reckon, these sorts of initiatives. You guys don't get to see, and the movie said it all, the most amazing marine environment in Sydney. Most tourists will come to Sydney and then jet up to the Barrier Reef, and it's lovely up there. But Sydney has so much to offer. Everything from the fish and the invertebrates to up the top right, there is actually a new species of coral. You may say maybe that's not a good thing with climate change, but there's some amazing creatures out off our coast, especially off Monabar. So one of the things you need to know is Australia has some of the best fisheries management on the planet. Despite that, recent studies have shown huge drops in fish species. This particular study, which I'll just have another slide of in a minute, just shows enormous drop-offs of fish, often attributable to overfishing. So graphs, there's some graphs that are hard to see, aren't they? But the red indicates a decadal drop in fish species, not just the commercial ones we'd like to eat, of about 30% over a decade. That caused quite a splash, pardon the pun, in the scientific world. Many took it to task because it's an offensive graph really for a wonderful country like Australia. Now people started saying, well, it's could be climate change, pollution, etc. But look at the green one on the left-hand side. That is the situation in marine protected areas around the country. No change. It's pretty hard to argue anything else but direct exploitation is responsible for the difference. So yes, these other climate change is an enormous spectre on our world, but overfishing has a place. Now in New South Wales, that's mostly recreational fishing, which is a wonderful pastime if properly managed and that sort of thing. But in New South Wales, that's our main fishing pressure. One of the things I like to impart is that even these small areas, as I'll illustrate, are very useful in protecting the fish and other creatures within them, but also have benefits outside. And I think that's important to talk about with the new research that's come out, because everyone outside marine parks can benefit. So that little comic, cartoon there shows a hypothetical marine park on the right and a fish area on the left, and it illustrates the concept of what we call spillover. And that's when within marine parks fish get bigger. For instance, very simply, bigger females, more babies that can come out of the marine park. And some really good Australian work on the Barrier Reef using genetics has shown that really is an impact locally to improve fisheries. And the other one is just the simple movement of fish out of a maybe crowded marine reserve. Out they come and can be caught. And you can tell fishers understand this if you've ever been to a marine park and seen fishers all lined up on the outside of it fishing. That suggests they also understand that it's a good place to spill over. So they have fisheries benefits, although I'd have to say the main benefit is to conserve the species within. We have a global goal, and that's been ratified through various organisations of what we call 30 by 30, and most of you probably know what that is, but it's basically protect 30% of the ocean by 2030. Now that protection is fallen far short in New South Wales and around Australia and around the world, as I'll show you. We have only 7% of our coastline under what we call fully protected no catch, no take areas in Australia, in New South Wales. And in Sydney, even more embarrassing, less than 2%. It's just not enough. The global goal, for good scientific and biological reasons, is 30%. Panning back to the world's oceans, the little dark blue dots are where the protected areas are at the moment. This is actually quite an overestimate because many of these areas you can still recreationally fish, you just can't commercially fish. So it turns out less than 2% of the world's oceans are fully protected. That's just shameful, let alone the fact that even those areas aren't well enforced because we don't have the people power to do it. Now, getting back to Sydney and what an amazing place it is, we're right at really the epicentre of climate change effects on the ocean, and that's one of our study areas, looking at the changes over about 23 years of studying tropical fish coming down the coast and that sort of thing. We're seeing quite a signal of increase in number of these exotic introduced species almost, and things like corals. So it's changing rapidly. We have a huge population. It's really quite surprising how well it's doing, considering how many of us are out there. And a huge, over 20% of the wreck fishers in Australia fish around the Sydney area. Many of them are strong conservationists, I will add. We have over 600 species of fish recorded even from Sydney Harbour, compared to about 400 around the entire coast of Europe. So we're punching above our weight for all this, but only less than 2% protection. You don't have to read all that, but it's just to remind us that Sydney Marine Park has been on the cards for many, many years. The red and yellow thing at the top left was a paper done by DPI Fisheries many years ago to suss out this Hawkesbury bioregion and indicate where they might put marine parks. It was shelved. And many initiatives, including the Sydney Park Initiative of 2018, were also shelved for various reasons I won't go into, but not really good biological reasons, I have to say. And lots of submissions. We belong to the Australian Marine Sciences Association. We spend a lot of time doing detailed submissions against whatever's come up with suggestions. We'd like them a little bit more considered. So the big picture of all that, it's going to be hard yakka getting 30% up, but it's a goal we have to achieve at some point. Meanwhile, we have, at the other end of the spectrum, we have an example here, and this is Cabbage Tree Bay, the first beach north of Sydney Harbour. And we've been working there for about 25 years on everything from tropical fish, sea dragons, etc., etc. And it's a magnificent place, as is the coast offshore. It's tiny, but it's amazing what it does. And a recent paper came out, and you can't really see the graphs very well there, but key fishery species like morwong, snapper and things like that are much more numerous within that area than adjacent, and bigger as well. So it's a really good illustration of how a small park can be effective. Why is it effective? Well, a lot of these fish don't move very far for their entire lives, except when they're babies, and so they're not going to be straying out of that area. And secondly, there's great enforcement. Not necessarily from the state government department, DPI Fisheries, that have a very low on people power, but by the locals. I wouldn't want to be the fisher that accidentally wet a line in that area there. The other thing we have in Sydney, which is a value, we have a series of what we call aquatic reserves. Now, they're not marine parks, but they have value. However, nearly all of those, and you can see them in red there, have fishing is still allowed. So you can't take shellfish off the rocks, etc., and that sort of thing, seaweed, but you can still fish in these. There's only a couple, including that one at Cabbage Tree Bay, that you can't fish in. So one option for the future would be to convert these all to true no-take areas to have value. We still need more, but it'd be a start. And anyways, I guess that brings us back to Bongin Bongin. Why is it valuable? Well, look at it there. It's an amazing little oasis of biodiversity. It will have strong spillover effects. It's surrounded by a community that are very interested in it, that get out in the water and look, so it'll be well enforced. But even more importantly, I think education is one of the keys, and I think it could be a real centre for marine education. And one of these days we have to have a full network of these sorts of things, I reckon, up and down the coast, because believe it or not, fish move, the babies like Nemo move up and down the coast, and if we only have one, where is it replenished from? Somewhere that isn't protected. So we need this connectivity of these areas. And so just to sum up, I guess, we need to impart the message that these are extremely valuable for the ocean, and they can also help fisheries and that sort of thing as well. So I'll leave it there, but happy to send this through to anybody or discuss further. Thank you.